Hello there everyone and welcome back to Music That Doesn't Suck, the place where we talk about music that doesn't suck, of course, while having a drink with our friends. And today we're going to be talking about those pesky, annoying bands that dare to be successful, financially speaking, and reaching a little bit more of a bigger audience than other bands that are not necessarily speaking as successful but are still great. And we're going to be discussing the fact that some people actually argue or find the idea of a band going successful and becoming mainstream as something bad, as a point of no return for certain acts because they start to suck, allegedly, of course. So before we get into it, let me introduce you to Stoner Brave, and I gotta visit Tarvanmi, the Stoner Brave. Say hello to our boys.
Use this time to catch your breath.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna make sure that we can read the comments.
Okay, so hello girls and boys, how's it going? Very glad to be back. It's great to have you here as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole thing with, and I think this is a phenomenon that happens mostly, not necessarily only, but mostly with metalheads. The whole thing about feeling so protective of their beloved bands that if they dare to actually become successful and become known by more people, they actually see that as a bad thing.
Yeah, of course, because they sell their souls to the devil.
Well, do they?
That's a question we're gonna be answering today, allegedly, of course. So, are you excited?
I am very much excited.
Shall we begin?
No.
Why?
Before we begin, would you introduce us to today's mix?
Of course we will, I will, with pleasure. This is the OG, the drink that started all, allegedly. This is known as an old fashioned. This guy is simply put rye whiskey, 2 ounces of rye whiskey, a cherry, a quarter of an orange, and sugar, and that's it. You mash the orange and the cherry and the sugar together inside of the same glass you're going to prepare the drink. Once it's done, then you pour 2 ounces of rye whiskey and then a dash of Angostura just to make it
Close the deal.
oof.
Yeah.
And this is such a great drink. Well, Santa.
Oh, salud.
It's such a good drink. Yeah. And it's so simple to make.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate classic.
It's the classic of the classics.
Yeah.
So, now we got that out of the way. Which is the band that comes to your mind whenever we have this discussion about sellouts?
Look, it's not necessarily the one that comes to my mind first every single time, but it is at the top of my mind right now.
Okay.
And it is at the top of the thumbnail right now as well.
Okay.
So people,
Somebody is exposing who created the thumbnail, right?
exactly. And it's Ghost.
Okay.
I think it's the first that comes to mind today, at least.
But why would you say such a thing of a ghost? What did they do to you?
Nothing. I don't mean it as an offense. And if you take it as an offense, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Not an offense.
But why would you say such a thing of them? All jokes
being
aside.
mainstream.
What? No, but do you think that they are truly mainstream?
I do think that's true.
Why? Elaborate.
Okay, there are plenty of points to be added to this conversation. Point number one, the music itself. Let's start there. I think the music is metal enough to be considered metal. It is metal.
Is it?
I think so.
I think it's a little bit closer to glam rock and hard rock than it is metal. But I will concede. Let's think that
Yeah.
it is metal.
But I think the music is approachable enough, and even it has very defined moments in a lot of their songs. They're catchy enough for them to be easily mainstreamable. They're very easy to digest.
But would you say that it has to deal more with the theatrics and the antics rather
So
than?
that's another point to the conversation. Music
Okay.
is one of them. Let's comment on the song that they just released and the one that you actually had a chance to react.
Yeah, Lacrima.
Great song, by the way.
Yeah.
I like the song quite a lot,
Yeah, it's a very good song.
and I think it's a good representation of Ghost.
Yeah, because I think, in my opinion, that song represents everything that Ghost is in a non-apologetic fashion. He's not trying to convince the world that they are not a very approachable and accessible, and let's say, dare I say to say, commercial band. And they are fully embracing it.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing in my opinion, because the sound of the track, I praise it while I was reacting and analyzing the track, of course, because it sounds unique and also honest. It's a good callback to the sound of older records, because it sounds organic, but it also sounds like their own thing, its own thing. It's not the cookie cutter thing that we have been having to endure with for the last 2 decades at this point.
Yeah.
Because at least in the early 2000s we got that sound. You know what I mean? The Nickelback sound.
Yeah.
But today is what? Is this lop?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this record by these guys, this song is the only one that I have listened to from the soon to be released album.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that caught my attention was the approach to the sound design of the track, which is, even though it's super mainstream, it has plenty of personality. It's not falling for the usual traps
Yeah.
that makes pop oriented music or successful sounding music sound the way it does.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why that kind of music is kind of despised by the true fans of metal.
Yeah,
But-
that's true.
Yeah, it's a good song. The band, as I stated in my analysis of the track, is not a band that I happen to be a fan of. I like some of their songs quite a lot. That's a fact, because they do have great stuff.
And they are objectively a good band.
They are,
Yeah.
yeah, because the performances. Never been to one of their concerts. I don't even know if I ever would, because it's not my jam. But I have seen from what I can hear from the record. Yeah, they are very good. They are good. Outstandingly good? No, because we live in a world in which Petrucci is still around and kicking Mayor of the Rear,
Yeah.
and among many other guys, right? But they are very good.
And look, I personally feel that they shine when they are embracing the more commercial side of their music, such as Lacrima. I think Lacrima, once again, is a good example of that, because I think they went full on. I won't use the word sellout, because sellout does
Has a bad connotation.
carry a bad connotation. I would say commercial, because commercial, even though a lot of the fan base treats the word commercial as if it was an offense, I don't see it as such. I don't see it like that. I think being commercial simply means that you have commercial potential, you have marketable potential in something, and I treat that as something extremely positive, actually.
Yeah, and the fact that a band is able to keep up producing those records is a testament of their success at a commercial level.
Yeah.
And if you like a band, the best thing you can do for them is support them to the point of them becoming mainstream or commercial enough for them to follow and pursue a viable career in music.
Yeah, which means that they're gonna be making music more and for longer.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's important for any musician to aspire for commercial success. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But there is a fine line that is crossed. And that's when I can give a lot of credit to the conversation to be had. Because you got examples of bands that when they went full mainstream, they changed
Yeah.
for the worst. I'm talking about Metallica.
Of course.
Of course,
Yeah, the usual
it's
suspect.
the elephant in the room. We'll come back to Ghost, because they are kind of a revival of the whole glam rock thing. But I want to please to first get Metallica out of the way.
Yeah. Okay.
What happened to them? Many things.
Many things.
Because at the beginning of their career, they had that sound. The whole term thrash metal, at least for me, Metallica in those early records, it's one of the best examples of the sound of thrash metal,
Yeah. Agreed.
because it sounds raw, rough around the edges, aggressive, fast, filled to the rim with bad attitude, and that's why we love it.
Yeah. And look, I think, let's say Kill Them All.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not by any stretch of my imagination the best mix or best produced album by the band.
Best
of
everything.
course. But I think it's one of the best captures of the essence of the band, even in sound,
Agreed?
because he had that kind of anger, but that kind of that attitude that you can see within the musicians. It was really well captured within the sound. I'm not even talking the music. The music is a different story, but talking sound itself. And even though it became way more polished later on, I feel that Kill Them All is a great sounding album for Metallica.
Agreed, because when I was a kid, I got introduced to Metallica, of course, through what was current at that point, which was the early 2000s stuff. So it's not necessarily the best starting point for any fan of Metallica, right?
Not really, yeah.
Because at that point they were still pushing, or at least the fan base was still divided by the release of Reload and Load, plus Garage Inc.
Yeah.
And everything that came after has been always like,
And
flip-floppy.
Yeah.
Because it's far from awful as well. The thing is that we all know that Saint Anger was a thing. Wherever. During that period, it's when I got introduced to the older stuff by Metallica. And when I found Kill 'Em All, my curiosity was big, but not necessarily. I didn't have big expectations, high hopes, because at that point I was old enough to recognize that usually the debut album tends to be not necessarily the best, because it's the point on which the band makes it themselves a name for.
It's understandable.
It's understandable
Yeah.
because it's the first foray, and usually when you get into a band such as Metallica, which is a legacy act, you got introduced to them by the good stuff, the huge, big, successful songs, right? So I already had some form of experience with that perspective. Then I listened to the track, to the album. I couldn't believe that the entire album was awesome.
Yeah.
First and foremost, no fillers. The whole thing is excellent. Then I realized later that it sounds like ass. But did I care? No, because the music was that good that okay, this band is great. I can see why people have them in such a high pedestal, and allowed me to appreciate the later stuff. But then I started to see something different happening between early Metallica and post Black Album Metallica.
Yeah.
Because you can see, even at that point in my life, I could see that something happened after the Black Album. I wasn't aware at that point. I was just a stupid kid. Give me a break. That Metallica became Metallica after the Black Album.
Yeah.
So I could hear a consistency in music, in personality, in character itself, in texture, for a lack of a better term, that was very consistent among the different records, but also you saw a continuity and a natural evolution. You started to see that the songs didn't remain the same, and also the songs show maturity because you see the evolution of the band as aiming for higher and much more complex tracks. Audacious, for example, I'm thinking of Fade to Black. Such a great oddball of a song. Or the first Unforgiven, which is the one from Black Album. Wow, but there is a consistency because you can always go back to Kill 'Em All. There is that sound.
Yeah.
Of course, comparing Kill 'Em All, which is the roughest Metallica ever got in sound, ignoring of course Injustice for All because there is no bass on that one, and comparing it to the highest and most polished version of Metallica, which is the Black Album.
Yeah.
There is something that is still present.
Yeah, the Metallica element is still
That
there
thing.
throughout. But look,
But then
yeah,
you listen to Fuel. What the hell?
look, Metallica is an interesting case when it comes to the sellout factor. And if you ask me, do I think Metallica is a sellout band? I would say yes.
Yes.
I personally think they are sellout.
Without
band.
even questioning.
And it's one of those bands that is kind of interesting because it's not only the music that reflects it. It's the band itself in some of the practices, in some of their approach to many things. And I think the biggest and most obvious example and evidence to their selloutness, to me, was the whole thing with the... what's the name of
Napster.
it? No. The Blacklist.
Oh, the Blacklist.
That thing.
Could you introduce the audience to
Look,
what you're discussing?
If you don't know what the Blacklist is, kudos to you. I'm about to change your life for the worst.
Yes.
By saying, by introducing you to this, because the Blacklist was basically an initiative by Metallica where they got other musicians by any other musician, like without regard to genre, to style, to any form of consistency with what Metallica stands for.
Yeah.
And they basically made their song available to them for them to do their covers to be released by Metallica
As a Metallica album.
as a Metallica album. And honestly, I've never seen before such a blatant disregard for your own
Cash grabbing.
material, for your own life and blood. Because
Yeah,
And now
it's
it-
your baby as a musician.
and honestly, the image of Metallica at that point in time was already tarnished in my head, but it was still
Acceptable.
acceptable. But that was the final nail to the coffin, being
Yeah.
quite honest.
I don't know why would you mention such a thing. It's not that we got to blows with certain fan base just because we had to. We had the goal to share our opinions on this particular matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, what he says is 100% correct, and it's basically a disgrace.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it because even though there are some great renditions of some of the classic Metallica songs in that particular Abomination. It's just we're not sophists here. We're not gonna describe reality, but it's accidents. So the vast majority of the content on that particular Abomination is terrible. And look, I'm not even trying to sugarcoat it. It's because it's that bad. And that was as well a good breaking point for me when it comes to me being a fan. I still hold them in high regard because they are great. The legacy is still there, and they have been a huge influence over me as a musician and even as a human being, because they have been present in my life since I can remember, in a positive way. Because their music has been a huge driving force for me as a musician, and look at me now. Yeah. But when that happened, as you said, it's a showcase of disregard for what they did, and especially for what those songs represent to the fan base.
Yeah.
Because regardless of it being the moment, the watershed moment for the band, on which they actually finally achieved the final apotheosis and they became Metallica
As we know it today. Yeah.
The vast majority of fans can at least enjoy the music from that album.
Yeah.
They might have some good arguments against it. I agree. But that's a common point for the vast majority of Metallica fans, because the old guard, even though they might be up to here with the Black Album, they can't deny that there are great songs there. And the new fan base, the 90s guys, is the best they ever got. So for them, it's the holy grail.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was a sad display.
Look, I feel that when it comes to a lot of people use the terminology of selling out in a way that I find to be very, very wrong. Because let's say, just analyzing the music now, putting aside a lot of the bad practices that Metallica did. Music-wise, Metallica has been hit and miss at times. It has delivered mostly great music, but it has its moments as well. But I wouldn't say that, let's say, even Load.
Yeah.
Let's say Saint Anger, which is probably the lowest point musically speaking for Metallica. It is a low point musically speaking. Yes, it is. But does it make them sell out because of that? No. They had their ups and they have their downs.
You have the right as an artist to suck.
Exactly. I see no problem with that when it comes to a moral perspective. Okay. Yeah. Musically speaking, is a different story. But
even if you want to use the moral perspective, that's actually a sign of them not selling out. They went for something weird, daring, and it failed miserably.
Yeah,
but they did it.
Yeah, that's artistry.
Yeah, that's legitimacy if you wanna call it like that.
And that's why whenever we talk about the sellout aspect of Metallica specifically, I tend to focus more on
Load, Reload, and Garage Inc.
No, but I tend to focus more on their business practice or stuff like that, rather than the music itself.
No, I always think of the music, man.
The thing is that musically speaking, I think they have low points, but I don't even think that they sold out their music.
Dude, Load and Reload are not necessarily bad music. They are simply not Metallica, or is Metallica trying to go mainstream?
Yeah.
Is Metallica attempting to repeat the success that was the Black Album? And instead of doing what allowed them to reach that point, which was, okay, let's condense what is great about our music.
Yeah.
Let's get it straight to the point. No. Let's try to make something that is inspired by what is hip at that point in time, which was alternative rock. And grunge.
Yeah.
And you got those things. Because I don't hate them.
Yeah.
Because those are not comprised of bad music. But that's not Metallica. That's not metal even.
The thing is that, for instance, I think it's Reload's more popular than Load.
Yeah, because it's the less terrible of the both.
And Reload is way more popular than Kill Them All, for instance. So let's say you're treating Kill Them All as real Metallica.
Yeah.
You have way more people thinking that Reload is Metallica than Kill Them All.
That's the reason why the purists have a good argument. Because there is more music from Metallica that it's part of the legacy or of the good era than it is produced during that sellout session, sellout period, if you wish. And the purists are trying to defend the actual Metallica. And I can see why the whole thing with becoming or going mainstream and becoming a sellout has such a bad reputation because it's some form of historic revisionism, if you wish.
Yeah.
Because it's ignoring the actual back catalog of the band
Yeah.
and condensing it into what is the lesser of the body of work.
And it's impressive to see that the audience itself cares way more about that legacy than the very band.
The band itself.
Yeah.
And that's why it has such a bad rep.
And that's why I will call them sellouts. I think
Agreed.
that's the very definition of it.
Yes. Now let's go to the side. A good sellout act. Iron Maiden.
Okay. Why would you say that Iron Maiden is sellout?
Because they are a highly successful band that has become a brand. You have seen chicks that have no metal bone in their bodies rocking t-shirts with Eddie the Knife.
Yeah.
Or the album covers from one of the cover of any of the albums from Iron Maiden.
Yes.
Why? Because the brand is so recognizable, and if you don't believe me, just look up just try to find any photos of Miley Cyrus rocking. I think it was one of the many times on which she's rocking those t-shirts. Is she doing it ironically or actually because she's a fan? I don't know. But the thing is that her fan base see those photos, they think they imitate what Monkey sees, Monkey does.
Yeah.
So a bunch of chicks adopted that metal style without even knowing a thing about metal.
Yes.
But why? Because Iron Maiden is such a sellout act that they broke out into the mainstream in that regard, not musically speaking.
But look, that's why I wouldn't frame them as a sellout act. I say that they are very commercial. They are extremely commercial.
Yeah.
And once again, I frame that as a good thing.
But they are sellout because they sell out their shows.
So let them sell them out. Let them make cake.
That's okay then. Why is that such a bad thing?
No, but that's the thing. I think selling out, having the negative connotation that it has,
Yeah.
the way that it feels to me, if a band is sell out, I'm saying that the band probably took itself out of their path, took themselves out of their way in order to make themselves commercial.
Okay.
And I don't think it's the case with Iron Maiden.
No,
I
no.
think they just played their hand super well.
Yeah.
Super well. Both musically speaking and in marketing. And in marketing, I gotta tip my proverbial fedora because they nailed it.
Yeah, they
Even
did.
Eddie, the imagery of Eddie is such a successful one. It's even bigger. I think Eddie is a more recognizable figure than any of the members of the band.
The band alone, man.
Yeah.
Because I think there are more people who have seen that character, the mascot, with the wording on top of his head, Iron Maiden, and they know that it's a thing. They know what is it, what it is, but it looks kind of metal, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because I can assure you that there are millions of soccer moms that they have seen that can recognize the branding,
Yeah.
but they have no idea that we're talking about a British band from the new British wave of heavy metal, new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the early 80s. So, yeah. And are they great? Yeah. They're still around and kicking, and they're doing what they have always done. The same good music
Yeah.
at the same high quality standards. They have their detractors saying that every song by Iron Maiden sounds the same. Do it? Does it?
No, I don't agree with that.
No, me neither. And of course, I might be a fanboy, but I'm a fanboy for a good reason. They don't suck. And one thing is that, yeah, they have a particular sound to them. Might not be of your liking, 100%. But that doesn't mean that they are a bad band.
Yeah.
And that they becoming successful, financially speaking, it's a bad thing.
Quite the opposite, actually. I think Iron Maiden is one of the last inspirational bands that I can think of.
Agreed.
And part of it, of course, is the fact that they became successful. Because Bruce is such an inspiring figure, being quite honest.
Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer.
Yeah, because first and foremost, he's a badass.
Yeah.
He's a very multi-talented and
He's basically a Renaissance man.
yeah, is what we would call a modern Renaissance man.
Yeah.
And the fact that he managed to achieve success, him and Iron Maiden to achieve success, I find that to be inspirational. I don't find that to be, look how they sold out or how they diluted their music in order to reach wider audiences.
No.
I don't think they ever did that.
No, they never, because if anything, they actually expanded and tried to go more self-indulgent with each release. Because you see that Iron Maiden has always been trying to be a prog rock band.
It always had some elements there.
And always tried to little by little sneaking into their music. After the success of Brave New World, of course, after the return of our Lord and Savior Bruce Dickinson to the band,
Blessed be his soul.
even that album, it's filled to the rim with epics, the long ass songs. I think the shortest one is 6 minutes, or the average is 6 minutes rather.
Okay.
And then you got Dance of the Dead again. I think the shortest one from that album is Rainmaker, the first badass single that I
It's
think
a
is very underrated track.
was
Such
a
a
very good
great
song.
song. It's a great song, man. Because the main the title track is The Dance of the Dead, and it's 11 minutes something.
Yeah.
It's basically like in my headcanon is the follow-up to Howled by Thy Name. So you see that the band, instead of going, and then they released freaking A Matter of Life and Death, which is such a contentious album, because in that period they decided not to play the classics during the promotional tour. Why, man? We've been doing that for 30 years.
Let us move forward.
Yeah,
God damn it.
enough. Once again, one proof that they are not sellouts. Damn. And yeah, you look it up. There are even videos of Bruce Dickinson actually not going to blows, but actually confronting the audience and giving good reasons why they are not playing the classics. And what they did next was a good move. Okay, we're not going to release a new album in a while because the next tours are going to be all about the classics. So you can chop them up.
Shut up.
And yes, and we can put an end to this conversation. That's great, man.
Yeah.
Great. And you see that going mainstream is not necessarily a bad thing if done correctly.
Yeah.
Because what's the difference between, in my opinion at least, between the way Iron Maiden moved forward with the whole mainstreamification of the brand when compared to Metallica? Iron Maiden doesn't give the impression of them going greedy.
Yeah.
Not greedy. You don't see greed behind their actions. You see, okay, we did it, man. Let's push forward. Let's keep going forward. And in the case of Metallica, I think they developed a liking for money. That's the impression it gives, at least for me.
The thing is, I think Metallica got way too big for their own sakes. Because I think, for as much as I love the fact that there's a metal band who is as big as Metallica is, because I think that's something positive.
It is great.
Because Metallica is a good band. For as much as we like to throw shit at it, it cannot be said that they are anything less than great.
Yeah, fantastic band.
So it's great that a lot of people can appreciate a great band. So no argument. You're not gonna find argument on me on that regard. But I think they let it go up to their heads.
Agreed.
And I think that maybe this music like this shouldn't be this big. Don't know. What do you think about that?
What do you mean by this big?
Metallica crossed the threshold of a big metal band. They are now a full-on big mainstream act. They are as big as anything else on the radio.
Well, I can. Let me see if I understand, because the only act that I think is as big as them is U2. But there's a big difference between the two acts.
Yes.
Not only in music. Music is the last thing that I'm thinking of when comparing them. I'm comparing them in the way that they present themselves to the world, what they mean, what they stand for, the actual differential of the band. Metallica never felt, or at least when you listen to the old stuff, as a band that was aspiring for greatness in the sense of fame and fortune.
Yeah.
It feels honest. It feels like a band that
Felt.
Yeah, it felt. Good point. It felt like you're dealing with a band that is just doing what they want to do, and if you don't like it, it's your problem. They are not trying to appease any of your tastes. It's about them and creating the music that they enjoy. When compared to U2, you can make the argument that at the beginning, yes, they were like that, but man, let's stop beating around the bushes. It's clear what happened to U2. They went. That's, in my opinion, one of the biggest sellouts ever.
Yeah.
Because they changed dramatically, and they give the impression of being a posh, successful bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Rather than with all due respect to the Edge and the Gangman, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Bono,
Yeah.
and I think Bono is the problem with U2.
Yeah,
because the
agreed.
bad rep that they get is out of his antics.
And it feels like Bono
postering.
sold a lot more than just the music, because
I think Bono is much more important from a branding perspective to U2 than the music is.
yeah, agreed.
Get me?
Yeah, it is.
Because the band is basically Bono and his goons.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a marketing perspective, fans of the band, dude, I get you. The band is not bad. It's actually one of the very last good bands we ever got.
Yeah,
And their music, I have my problems with it. Bad,
it's not bad music by any means.
by far, is a bad band. They are great.
Yeah,
But these cult of personality around the concept of Bono, because I don't even treat him as a person, man. It's an entity. Yeah, it's a little bit off the rails, man.
look, I'll even get on onto this to take us back to a different point of the conversation. Bono is a lot more of a public figure, him personally, than the music itself. I think
Yeah.
Bono is way more recognizable than the music of
Agreed.
U2. So that can also be a way to perceive it as a gimmick. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a gimmick. Now thinking that it's something external to the music that makes the music be appreciated by people.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's one of the definitions of a gimmick on that regard. And the first band we actually talked about here today
Ghost.
runs on a very big gimmick as well.
100%.
Do you think, now using these two examples, because they are very different facets of the same thing, do you think that a gimmick playing a part in the success of your music waters down the music?
Good question. In my opinion, it depends on how you handle this whole situation. Because Ghost, what makes them recognizable? The theatrics, man.
Yeah.
The music comes second. For normies, okay? For the first impression is usually the looks, the theatrics, the spooky factor, the whole thing with the demonic thing and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everything is done in a tongue-in-cheek fashion. That's fun. It's spookier than scary, and that's fun, and people can appreciate that because it's clearly it's a rock band, and rock band is evil and they are devil worshippers and stuff, so it makes sense. So then you listen to the music. In the case of Ghost, it's well done. Why? It sounds like the way they look,
Yeah.
so I have no problems with that.
Yeah.
Because they are doing the Alice Cooper stuff. It's basically that.
Yeah.
Or even Kiss to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Kiss is a little bit different because the Kiss is perfect, man. Because their music is basically the same way as they look. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Fun, over the top.
Over the top, stupid, fun. You are gonna have a blast. You're not there to think about the Overmensch. Overmensch
Yeah.
by Nietzsche. You're there to let's rock and roll all night. Of
Yeah.
course, that's why you go there. And in the case of Ghost, it's basically the same. The issue is that, not the issue. Let me try to phrase it in a non-controversial fashion.
Because it's a safe space.
It's a safe space. No, look, the situation with Ghost is that, and I think this could be a little bit of the flack that they get, because since they're successful, and how dare a rock band that is not sucky be successful? They are attacked from the angle of their music being perfect for angsty, gothic chicks. Is it the case? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is that a bad thing?
No.
Far from it, because it's an aesthetic. It's not necessarily for everybody, but numbers shows that it's for a good chunk of people.
Yeah.
And kudos to them, because I would rather live in a world in which Ghost is a band that is popular and replacing everything that is coming out of the slot machines that is basically the algorithms now than what we got today.
Wow. By orders of magnitude. Yeah.
Because that means that if that's the worst we got as a society, god damn it!
Utopia.
Utopia. We would be talking about the expansion of across the stars by humanity and stuff. But I don't see that as a problem. And the whole thing with the makeup and the antics on stage and off stage and the whole mythology around them, that's part of the charm. And
Yeah.
are you gonna tell me that Van Halen didn't have that,
Yeah.
or freaking Pantera? Don't tell me that Dimebag Darrell is not this close from being pontified. Dude, that applies to everything, and these guys from Ghost nailed it because they have no competition. For real, The Darkness was already forgotten 10 years ago, which is the closest that comes to my mind right now. In terms of sound, aesthetics, great band by the way. The Darkness is also a very good band, but they were full on glam rock.
Yeah.
And when they came out, it was a success because we haven't seen this for the last 20 something years. Look at that, it's fun, great, Queen-like, yet quite poisony.
Yeah, more on the Poison side.
Yeah, but you see the vocal harmonies are very Queen-like, and even the guitar play is a little bit more by the Brian May school of thought than it is from Poison. But you got the rest coming out of Poison now.
Yeah.
The ridiculously over-sexualized antics and stuff. And if they got success out of that,
Yeah.
then Ghost comes out probably like 10 years later, like 2008, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Not sure on that.
2010, 20,
If you can tell us if you know better, please.
early 2010s.
Yeah.
It was once again a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
But they did what the other guys didn't do. They went for the other side of the glam rock stuff. The spooky side, the Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
which is something that Marilyn Manson also did his own spin during the 90s.
Yeah.
Because he didn't replicate it. He simply, okay, the 90s are edgy. Let's do it. Let's do the same, but edgy. Because while, look, Alice Cooper is basically the thing. What's the name of this guy? John Carpenter. It's like Halloween, the movie, in the 80s.
Yeah.
While Marilyn Manson is Scream
Okay.
in the 80s, or even better, Saw in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the same but gritty. It's a weird ass analogy, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Why? Because both of those acts are heavily relying on the antics in the way that the whole performance takes place, how everything is projected, and how even the music itself is designed. Because look, it's not composed, it's designed. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Let me explain. It's designed around the theatrics and the aesthetics. Because, okay, we look like this. When we hit the recording studio, we gotta make sure that without looking at us, the sound reflects how we look like.
Yeah.
That's why I use design. Of course, it has to be composed, it has to be written. But
look, I think that's actually the legitimizing factor.
it is.
Because, see, Ghost, I think it's a good way to put it, the whole thing about designing the music around those aesthetics. But the music doesn't feel empty.
No,
The music doesn't feel soulless.
no.
It's substantial. There's substance behind it.
Would you say it doesn't feel like sell out?
It doesn't. That's exactly the point. Because even though they are catering to a manufactured aesthetic,
Yeah.
because and probably they decided to do it because they saw the potential in it. Like, nothing wrong with that. I would feel that it was sell out if the music was trying too hard to sound like that, without having that bit of substance that we're
substance.
talking about. Because then that empty music just trying to replicate an aesthetic, that will be a sellout.
Alright.
And I don't think it's the case.
Yeah, because look, moving away from Ghost a little bit. How about the 2000s? The power metal stuff that was very popular. Let's face it. Nightwish is a gigantically recognizable name.
Yes.
Huge. Nightwish is not necessarily the forefathers of symphonic metal, but at least I can tell that they are the ones that made it popular and commercially viable.
And I think they are still to this day the biggest name in it.
100%. 100%. Why? They did everything right, man, because they embraced the gothic aspect, which was still quite in vogue by the time among the angsty people of the world. It was before emo. They were still goth. But they did it with balls.
Yeah.
And having a great female singer fronting the band, which was also okay. It's interesting. They are doing the Beauty and the Beast stuff because they have the melodical and very operatic voice. singing. Tarja something is her name, right?
Yeah,
I
the
just know.
whole-
I just remembered right now the Turulen or something like that. It's from Norway, I think, or Swedish. Well, it's from. Well, please tell me, it's from the Nordic countries. And their sound, the music is very, very not aggressive sounding because it's similar to, very inspired by Rhapsody. Super power metal.
Yeah.
But power metal is fast and aggressive.
Yeah.
Not angry. It's not evil sounding. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you hear that kind of guitar playing and that kind of drumming in particular, you're expecting the singer, right? The male singer.
Yeah.
Then bam, it's a female singer doing it in an operatic fashion. What the hell?
That's interesting.
That's interesting and gimmicky, 100%. But then it works,
Yeah. It was
It
done
works.
well. It was done well.
and it became its own thing. It's kind of subgenre within a subgenre.
Yeah.
Because every time Epica is basically that, but with a gorgeous angel. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And she's a great singer. Man.
Oh, she's a fantastic singer.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. Yeah, redhead. And man,
Which spot?
yeah. Which part? Yeah, let me try to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a breather.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
but she's such a look. Beyond my fascination with her being gorgeous, they play their hand correctly.
Yeah.
Because again, Epica, for those of you who don't know, is once again a symphonic metal, female fronted, but she also shares the stage with a male guttural singer, and their music is a little bit more is closer to the sound of death metal than it is to symphonic, quote unquote. Okay, don't
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
of course I'm just for those of you who are not familiar with the band, it's just that they sound a little bit closer to death metal than they are to Rhapsody of Fire. Okay, but by a few degrees, and that's another gimmick. Now we're clearly dealing with the Beauty and the Beast concept.
Yeah.
Does it work? Yes. Why? They're not trying to hide the fact that they're playing a gimmick. The same happens with Lacuna Coil, another band that has the same principle, and both bands are great. Not a fan. I don't listen to their music, but I am well aware of what they do, and I can't deny that they got the success they got out of the quality of the stuff they're producing.
Yeah.
They are hitting a particular niche, a particular audience, and they are catering to them, but also developing the concept correctly.
Yeah.
Because you got other great acts, for example, Camelot. Nobody knows about him.
It's such a great band.
It's such a great band.
Yeah.
Such a fantastic. Everything about him is great, man. But they are not popular. Why? Because there is no gimmick.
But I think they were popular for the blink of an eye. I think. But
I don't know, man.
But I think they kind of had their moment.
Because it's coming from the same era. It's coming from the same movement. But the thing is that they went way too close to the prog sound.
Yeah.
And probably that's the reason why they couldn't find a particular niche in the audience, because Camelot is, for those who are in the know, is a very well respected name in the prog rock sphere. Not because of them being proggy, it's because they are prog related.
Yeah.
They kind of have progressive rock moments that are like, wow, I didn't see that coming, that was great. But the whole thing is power metal.
Yeah. But I think don't know if I would frame it as power metal.
No, but it sounds power metal.
It sounds power metal, but composition-wise, they are way more
Expansive.
because
Yeah.
I think power metal, for as much it is a cool genre. I like some power metal stuff, but I feel the power metal is a very rigid.
It has its ways.
Yeah, it's very set in what it is to be a power metal band, or songs even. And I think the Camelot strays quite far from that while retaining a lot of the aesthetic, but
But that's the reason why I think they never got the same success as bands such as Sonata Arctica. Full, huge, extremely gigantic, successful, sell-out band that I don't like, but I respect. I even saw him live. Don't ask me why. But I did.
I know why.
Fun. It's fun band. I gotta admit that they are fun. They are great performers, fantastic musicianship. The songs are not of my liking, being frank, because they are basically chick metal. 100%. And is that a bad thing? No. It's an aesthetic, and it's the best way to describe it I got.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? It's metal that, for whatever reason, appeals to women.
Yeah.
Because women can be metalheads as well, believe it or not, guys. And if you have never met one, it's because you haven't gone out of your dwelling, your basement, your den of thievery. Yeah, because those are, and they are more numerous than you might imagine.
Actually. Yeah.
I can prove it in my hands. Knowing what you might be thinking. So, it's been, I'm going to stop there. But,
Yeah.
but, the aesthetic is usually, it has a little bit of the boy band thing, a little bit, but not in a homosexual way. If you know what I mean. They do it in a you know that this guy is way too handsome to be in a metal band, but he's not handsome enough to be part of the Backstreet Boys. If you know what I mean. So that may be the reason why.
The worst part is that, yes, I know what you mean.
You get it, man.
Yeah.
And I'm not lying. The thing that's difficult, you know exactly what I'm saying, man. And for those of you watching, you know exactly what I mean as well. Don't try to hide it. And it's usually one of the determining factors of what makes shake metal. Is that a bad thing? No. Because see how I describe Sonata Arctica? They're great. Great band.
Yeah.
But not for me. Clearly not. And hugely successful. Would you say that they are sellouts? I would say that they're successful musicians.
Once again, I will go back to the term commercial. It is 100% commercial.
Yeah, because this is commercial
Yeah,
rather than sellout.
But I don't think sell out, because I think it is what is. I think it's honest. It's
Since
honest.
the beginning, they were like, we do this.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
And it's for this audience.
Yeah, if you like it, you're part of the album. If you don't like it, that's okay, man.
Yeah.
Because it's usually people who are quite into is chicks and people who are quite into anime.
Mm-hmm.
Because don't know.
No, but there's a correlation.
You know why?
Yeah, there's a correlation.
Yeah.
But it's also because the whole thing with the anime opening and closing
Maybe,
stuff like that.
maybe. I don't know. I don't get anime, man.
Yeah.
I have many things to say about anime, but I won't.
That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, that could get me in trouble. But
Yeah, behave, because
Yeah.
a good chunk of our audience is fan of anime.
I know.
So behave.
I know. So look at that.
Because we gotta sell out as well.
Yeah, we gotta sell. Look at that. Talking about selling out. Yeah, but I think that there is that correlation there. It might be what you're saying. That relationship between the openers for those shows and the kind of music that they use on those shows might be the reason why they resonate with the music. Their music resonates with this kind of audience.
Yeah.
But I digress. Going back to the whole thing with selling out. Yeah, Sonata Arctica is successful commercial band. I'm gonna put it like that. And another example of being honest, yielding great results.
Yeah.
Because unlike Metallica, they have never changed.
And unlike War.
Yeah, the same as War. They have never changed. Their music is the same, because the other day I took a look at on Apple Music, and from time to time I actually give a chance to the new releases tab on the homepage on Apple Music.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, due to the fact that I listen to some power metal, Sonata Arctica released a new album, and one of the tracks popped up. Yeah, I recognized them in seconds. I wasn't looking at the phone. I was actually at the gym, and the song went like, it's gotta be these guys. It's like these guys. Like, I gave it a listen. Just okay. Let's see what they are up to now. The same. And I'm not saying the same in a derogatory fashion.
It is their sound.
It's their sound.
Yeah.
Because a band has to evolve through time, but based on what makes them unique. That's one of the many reasons why many bands that live long enough to become a legend, they face later attacks by their fan base, because how dare you to still sounding the same way as you did? We need you to change. And when they do, how dare you to change? You lost your soul, you're a sellout. What the hell?
Yeah.
I would say to use another word, but
The thing is, we have to take into account that those people are always going to exist, and they are going to find flaws in anything, in everything, in everyone.
yeah.
And there's no getting away from it. And if, let's say now, talking to the musician mostly. If you're trying to avoid having the criticism that your music is not moving forward enough or is not keeping the legitimacy enough to try to appease that guy that's gonna hate you either way, you're failing.
Yeah, because
From its very inception.
you should be appealing to the ones that do like what you do.
Exactly.
Because those are your fans. Their guy is probably not even a fan of yours. He's just there to hate on you
Yeah.
for free. Or it might be one of those infiltrating rascals.
And you're falling for a trap.
Yeah. I don't know, it could be an industry plant, who knows?
But look, I think the whole thing with commercial, not being commercial, being selling out or not sell out, I feel that people have this idea that if you turn your music into a product, you're selling out. All music is a product.
It is.
It's a product that every musician is trying to sell their music.
Yeah.
So,
and
and that-
hopefully selling out.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole idea of treating music as a product is not the problem. The problem is bending yourself backwards, trying to turn what you create into something specific.
That is more successfully, more commercially successful.
Exactly. But let's say within the scope of what you can create, the whole scope of what you can create. A part of it is commercial.
Yeah.
But it's within what you are, within what you do. That's the best part. That's exactly what you should work on.
100%. 100%. That's why when we mentioned the whole debacle that is the Metallica's history, the way I described the Black Album kind of makes sense. Not because I hold the truth. No, it's because if you look at it from any perspective, you start to see that what makes that album so successful. And even though it's divisive, it's a point of common ground for both sides of the conversation. It's because Metallica actually kind of trimmed the fat of their music, for the good or the bad, because you need also fat for a good steak to be tasty. So I think the fact that they actually understood what made the band appealing to a good chunk of people who enjoys music, because at that point, even though metal was already a thing, it wasn't necessarily as what am I trying to convince? It was as divided as it is today, but at least it was respected. It was seen as the superior genre because it was the one that wasn't looking for the money first. Because the thing is that at that point in time, rock music became so big that it became part of the musical industrial complex if you think about it. So metal, being an underground movement, was and has always been seen as the superior genre of rock music because it's the one that is never gonna sell out. Get me? So when Metallica sat down, that's totally headcanon. I had no evidence for this, but I think that they decided, okay, let's make the record. That this record is the one that we truly gotta knock the ball out of the park. It's now or never, because probably they were starting to get tired of the same dingy clubs and stuff and touring massively with the little return they got. Because at that point, even though they were making it, they weren't that successful.
Yeah, they weren't
because
huge
and money wise, man, because they were still a working band.
Yeah.
They needed to be on the road, otherwise they wouldn't be able to pay the bills. So probably they were started to get fed up with that. I can't not blame them. So they wanted to make sure that this record would be the one that set them apart and set them in a different path. So they sat down and thought about everything that makes the music that they were producing at that point successful, and remove or trim down the parts that could be not necessarily appealing to a lesser somebody with less interest in their music, rather than saying that they were stupid. Because that was it could have been interpreted as such. No, there are people who are not necessarily attracted to more instrumental elements in music. Why? I don't know. Well, I do know, but I'm not gonna say. And because think of this: there is no instrumental in that album.
Yeah.
Something that was common, because you could say that certain albums doesn't have a full-on instrumental track. Yeah, but they have basically songs within songs that were full instrumental. For example, the beautiful in the mid section of Master of Puppets.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That section,
It's
and
great.
it's the best part of the track, at least in my opinion. So, but it's not necessarily. It's a little bit more of a harder sale for someone who is a casual music listener. So they remove all of those stuff, those elements, and bam, they got light in a bottle.
Yeah.
So that's why I see the divide happening. Bad is not necessarily a bad thing. The problem came next.
Yeah, because I think up until that point, they were just doing that I mentioned, kind of selecting amongst the music that they did naturally. They selected the portions of it that worked better, that had the more potential of resonating with the audience. And even though that is a form of commercializing the music, I don't think that's pushing the line of selling out yet. But I think later on, well, that can be argued.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we got to the end of this live stream. I think we covered more ground than I expected.
Yeah.
Because I when we were discussing the topic for today's discussion in the morning, when we mentioned the whole idea of going for sell-out stuff, we're like, well, yeah, why not? Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect us going this deep into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we ended up having a good conversation.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, thanks for joining. If you want to support this kind of content, the best way to do this is by listening to music on Apple Music or Spotify, which is truly trying to go full on mainstream. So please give a try. You might like it, especially if you like Ghost and Metallica, because yeah, there is a huge correlation between their music and ours.
Yeah.
And also, if you want to support us even further, the best way to do it is by being part of this channel, subscribing, leaving a like, and also joining us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us on a much more personal basis. And also joining our Discord, which is going to be linked in the description of this live stream or video, depending on when you are watching this. And there you can have conversations with us outside of, well, a continuation of this.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, the only thing left to be said is that as every single time we meet you, we gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember that we'll see you when we see you.